Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. I'm loading up with about 8 hours of new content, plus all the old members section stuff is going over there. And also, these shows you hear right now on the radio, AM/FM radio, you can hear them on the Patreon with no commercials, commercial-free. And, of course, our archive is always free. You go to Spreaker.com and you look up Opperman Report, and there's a chat room and there's a a message board. You can communicate with other listeners and stuff like that. But our guest today, we got a really wild topic for you. It's a very strange historical thing going on down there in St. Louis, Missouri. Our guest today is Devin Thomas Oshea. You could find him on his Twitter account, which is Devin T. Oshea. And he's writing a book coming up shortly about the veiled prophet. Now, what is the veiled prophet? Let's start with that.
Well, if you grew up in St. Louis, you know probably something about the VP Fair or the VP Parade. And that VP, not a lot of people know, refers to veiled prophet. And so the veiled prophet is this very old, century-long tradition in St. Louis where the rich of the city put on a clannish costume and parade around and crown a queen of love and beauty at a private debutante ball. Okay,
and when was this created? How old is this thing?
The debutante tradition goes back to 1878 and the 1877 railroad strike. But the veiled prophet is like a symbol, sort of goes all the way back into Islamic folklore, where it got picked up by the Irish poet Thomas More. But yeah, it basically goes back to like 83 BC or something like that, in the land of Khorasan, which is in modern-day Iran.
How did Islamic folklore make its way to St. Louis, Missouri in the 1800s?
That's I mean, one of the things I really like to read history, and one of the things that becomes very apparent in like the 1800s is how obsessed and fixated sort of the West is on the Orient and Orientalism. There's this whole thing that, you know, the scholarship of Edward Said goes into, but there's many more sort of Orientalist scholars who talk about how the Orient acted for Europe and America as a kind of like dreamland where things that couldn't happen within Catholicism or within the strictures of the monarchy could go and sort of like parade around in the Oriental dreamland, which no European had been to, but poets like Thomas More were like loved creating characters that were sort of women who were sexier than, you know, European women, and men who were more ferocious and sort of dashing than what was possible in Europe at around, 1810.
And do we know who it was in St. Louis who was the influence to bring in this Orient fascination?
Yeah, that would be during the Civil War. Thomas More's poems were really popular, and the theme would have been seen in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, where in the 1860s, the Mystic Crew of Comus had Lalla Rookh, the book of poems, as like a theme. So each parade sort of acted like one of the poems, and one of them was The Veiled Prophet of Khorasan. And the thing about 1860s New Orleans is that there's a lot of Confederate upper crusts knocking around after the war, specifically the St. Louis Confederate cavalry officer Alonzo Slayback, who sounds like a Snidely Whiplash kind of guy. And Alonzo was a cavalry officer in Missouri. He followed Old Pap Pierce around. And after the war was over, he actually fled the country with Old Pap, and they went to the New Virginia colony, which was a Confederate colony set up in Mexico to petition the Emperor Maximilian to allow slavery in this like one small section of their country, as like kind of a diaspora of the Confederacy. And there's many examples of this in Brazil and Argentina, and Alonzo Slayback went there to hide out for a while and write bad poetry about how cool the Confederacy was.
Fascinating.
So he was a poet too, yeah.
So it came from the Veiled Prophet of Khorasan, made its way from the Middle East, I guess, right, to Mardi Gras to New Orleans, and then made its way over to St. Louis. But now, when you see a picture, or you see some pictures, old paintings and stuff of this parade, it looks like a Ku Klux Klan guy is the veiled prophet.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's like there's sort of like these two wires in history cross at that parade in Mardi Gras as Alonzo's. I think that Alonzo was there because he was doing a lot of business with the Mississippi barge barons who would go from New Orleans to St. Louis. And there's like these two wires of history that cross where there's a big problem with the first wave of the Klan that has, sort of reestablished the rule of white supremacy after the Civil War as, the law of the land. Like, the war might be over, the slaves might be freed, but night riding keeps the black population and abolitionist cause, in absolute fear for your life if you speak up too much. And so let me ask you, wait, was this parade then, was it like a symbolic thing, like, hey man, the Klan's still here, we got our eyes on you, and we're marching down the middle of the street? Well, there's a thing in the Grant administration that was called the Enforcement Act, and some of the later enforcement acts were about directly suppressing the Klan, including making it illegal to put a hood on your head in public. So as Alonzo is looking at the Veiled Prophet in New Orleans, and he is thinking about going back to St. Louis, especially after the railroad strike of 1877, he is thinking, wow, isn't it a coincidence that the Veiled Prophet looks a little clannish, especially for the first wave of the Klan, who didn't have the like steepled hoods or anything. These were more like improvisational costumes that you would make at home. Alonzo looks at that Veiled Prophet and thinks, wow, I could definitely still become a Klansman in public if I only did it under the guise of art in like a parade or using source material from a literary source.
Who is the person who actually is the Veiled Prophet, the person who's riding in that parade in the costume?
Well, the first one was the chief of police named John Priest, and he was openly the first Veiled Prophet in the record, and he was depicted on a float going through the working class neighborhoods, standing beside an executioner and a bloody butcher's block. So the first Veiled Prophet is John Priest. They came out and said it, and then from then on it was supposed to be anonymous for every year. But the real purpose of that first parade was to violently suppress or make sure that the working class populations in St. Louis understood who was in charge. And so, the Veiled Prophet is a blue blood club. It's a club for rich people. And in 1877, there was the biggest general strike in the United States, the Great Railroad Strike, where arguably, Philip Foner argues that St. Louis had the first American commune government for about a day during that strike, because there's a sugar manufacturer. It's kind of a pedantic historian detail, but there's a sugar manufacturer that had to ask the strikers to continue production in order to not spoil his crop, and therefore it was like, oh yeah, that means the commune is the de facto government. I mean, they shut down the whole city and sort of had a stranglehold on the elected government in St. Louis.
Yeah, I listened to your interview on TrueAnon that you sent me, and you just described about how they were shutting off the water to the rich part of town.
Oh yeah,
which is a great tactic. How come that tactic has never been reproduced? I've never heard of anybody doing that before.
Yeah, I mean, you get rich people really scared that like their life in their home is going to make them turn into a prison. That's some leverage. But yeah, I mean, this was a serious strike. This was not. They made a big point of having both white and black workers march together and march with the American flag, and also march with the implements of their trade, like the railroad men all brought coupling pins, you know, and the guys working on the dock all made sure they had, you know, something to defend themselves with, because this was a strike that was also violently suppressed, but went on for about a week.
Now, was it suppressed by strikebreakers or the police, the army? Who came in to suppress?
Well, the thing about the railroad strike was that it set off, it was part of a nationwide strike that started, you know, all across the Rust Belt. Thomas Pynchon has a line about the country at this time that, you know, it had grown to be the exact size and dimensions of the, like, skeletal railroad that ran through it. And so the strike went up and down the rail lines. And, so the National Guard got deployed, but they had to go everywhere. And so they couldn't go everywhere at once. And so the local police sort of lost control that way because there was just not enough to push the strikers, you know, out of the street. But ultimately what happened was that the strike lost momentum. The executive committee sort of wasn't able to agree or map out a plan for, like, what do we do now that we have power. And then a big racist faction of the labor movement also started refusing black laborers and wouldn't let them march with them. So it was big mishmash of problems. And then eventually the National Guard did mobilize, and they, I think, killed something like 9 or 10 strikers and breaking it up. It was a pretty bloody one. But the same thing was happening in, like, Philadelphia and Chicago and all these other sort of Rust Belt areas.
You know, when you mentioned earlier how the chief of police was riding down in the middle of the working class neighborhood with the executioner and the bloody thing there, right, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, were there were there any fans cheering him on, or was this a totally negative reception?
I think there's like a couple phases of the Veiled Prophet parade itself, and at this time this would have been a direct threat. I mean, there's mention that, like, you know, some of the striking workers gave their kids pea shooters, and they would go shoot them at the Veiled Prophet floats. But after this year, you know, the symbology de-escalated to be much more of the parade became a tool of the elites to sort of dictate to these immigrant upstart communities, organized communities, the values of the country, quote unquote. And so this is what Thomas Spencer, who's a brilliant historian who wrote the, like, academic book about the Veiled Prophet Society, he sort of picks up on this power dynamic with the way that parades affected sort of American citizenry from, like, 1870, let's say 1887 to, like, the 1930s or 40s.
Now, besides the ball and the parade, does the Veiled Prophet Society have meetings, other kind of communications activities?
I think that they have today they're in a different phase of, like, the Veiled Prophet Society. Like, the apex of the Veiled Prophet Society was probably around the 50s or 60s, and it maps sort of the decline of St. Louis itself as, so there's these different phases of boom and bust with the Veiled Prophet Society. I'm sure at some points they met as regularly as, like, an elk club would, or, like, you would know guys from the Veiled Prophet Society because they would be in the exclusive clubs with you around the city. But now I think they've transitioned much more into, like, yeah, it's a twice annual thing we do. We get together when we can, and there's not as much the stakes are a little lower for, I think, the current St. Louis elite, because the Veiled Prophet thing has sort of transitioned into different modes of power, like much more public modes of power. Like the current boogeyman of, like, St. Louis politics is called Civic Progress, and they're basically just a board of businessmen who got together in the 1980s, and you basically can't get anything big done in St. Louis unless you go through them. And so they're the new power broker that kind of took over for the Veiled Prophet. But now we're plagued by this libertarian billionaire named Rex Singfeld, who's sort of like, if you want to get something done in a city, now you got to go through Rex. So, like, the Veiled Prophets are 2 steps below the altar of power they used to be at.
Gotcha. Now, the original Veiled Prophets, right, when it would be riding through town with the police chief and stuff like that, were there associated vigilante movements and events take place in conjunction?
I don't think that there was really the need outside of like the police to sort of enforce the Veiled Prophet at that time. Like having the chief of police be the first one, and then everyone after that being a local millionaire, sort of business tycoon or power broker. It's the police automatically act as sort of the goons, which, you know, at that time, especially in the 1870s, there was a lot of labor unrest. Like St. Louis used to be full of trolley lines, and actually like the trolley union was sort of the biggest thorn in the city elite side, because they could shut down whole neighborhoods and barricade the trolley lines and exert power that way. So, but the police were their enemy. There wasn't a lot of need for like a clan-like group of vigilantes, you know.
Now, you mentioned also too that there's some bizarre rituals that they do.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Veiled Prophet mythos is very confused, because the way that St. Louis's elites rewrote the Veiled Prophet to be like kind of a Santa Claus character, like their whole thing is that the Veiled Prophet is this beacon of light, like some kind of deity who is from the Orient that is there to spread endless prosperity to the city of St. Louis. And that's sort of like a confusing...
With an executioner next to him.
Oh, yeah. Like, the mythos is... I just tweeted this the other day, but there's a poem called The Beloved Despot that is used by the Veiled Prophet to describe who the Veiled Prophet is. And, I mean, according to that poem, he's always young, he is always inviolate, he's always superb, he sows in the minds of men the divine wish or the divine knowledge, and he is also like an endless morning. So he's the spirit everlasting. So that's very different from Thomas More's Veiled Prophet, who was literally kind of the devil, who tricked a cult of followers into following him into battle, into like endless wars of plunder in the Middle East. So like Thomas More was using the Veiled Prophet much more to talk about fears of despotism, like in Napoleon would be like a big figure in his mind who would just, you know, gobble up territory and loot as much as possible, and then as soon as the tides turned, the Veiled Prophet orders all of his cult followers to kill themselves, and then he jumps into a dish of fire and disappears. So there's like a very, you know, you can see the breakage between the sign and the symbol in 1877 when they're like, well, the Veiled Prophet is actually a good guy, even though he looks really sinister.
But it's sort of like the Luciferian thing, the angel of light, you know, the devil's angel of light. You know, it's kind of a symbology there. Very, very strange. Now, yeah. And what are some of the rituals, though? Because there's stuff about kissing the feet, sitting on a gold chair. What's going on? Oh. Maidens and beauty queens and...
Yeah, well, of course, the Veiled Prophet needs to crown a queen of love and beauty every year, because when he visits St. Louis, it's only for a day. And so he needs his queen to rule in his stead for the rest of the year.
Oh.
And of course, you know, as you do. And so that's why the Veiled Prophet first crowned Alonzo Slayback's daughter the Queen of Love and Beauty, conveniently. And then every year after that, a different daughter of the Blue Blood class gets crowned the queen, kind of like a beauty contest, but it's a debutante ball. And it's kind of much more, the history of debutante balls is like the history of a circuit of blue bloods who want to keep, marriages happening within their family and friends, sort of recirculating power through, more discreet dowry agreements and stuff like that.
So whoever's picked, like the queen, right, or made, this would be reported in the society section of the newspaper. The veiled prophet picked this queen. Don't the average person say, well, hey, what does the veiled prophet mean? Like, does the average person say and wonder and look into the history?
I mean, it's the weirdest thing in St. Louis where, my parents and my aunts and uncles all grew up here, and my grandparents were here their whole lives, and they all knew about the Veiled Prophet and the Veiled Prophet Society, but it was very mysterious. It was a mysterious-looking guy, and he, it's a kind of it was an aspirational thing in the 1960s or 70s, like young girls in St. Louis wanted to be the Queen of Love and Beauty because it was like winning prom queen of the city. But a lot of people were just like, yeah, he's a weird, quirky tradition. He's this thing that, not a lot of people drew the line between the Veiled Prophet and a Klansman, especially because, the Veiled Prophet is technically, like I said, a first wave Klansman, and they were a little more like magician looking, more like Father Time or like a wizard. But, that still carries on in the Klan with like the Grand Wizards and stuff like that.
Now, do we know who, like today, this year, they're going to have the parade. Do we know who's going to be the Veiled Prophet?
We have no idea, and they canceled the ball for this December. I guess they're going to have the parade again. I think they canceled the last one also because of COVID, but we don't know. The Veiled Prophet Society today is much more, it's not necessarily all of the CEOs in St. Louis, because St. Louis is a city that really lost its executive class in the 1990s with like corporatization. Like you don't have your headquarters in St. Louis anymore because there's just nothing here. And as sort of power consolidates at the corporate level, you have all of your people who would be veiled prophets in St. Louis who have moved out to the coasts or to Europe, or live in places that are more glamorous than here.
Now, I was reading some of the material you sent me, and it seems a part of the tradition is that these young debutantes are escorted down the aisle by friends of their fathers. Their father's friends appoint the guy. Something like that. Explain it. Yeah,
it's a whole thing of, a debutante ball is about announcing a young girl into womanhood. And so she is presented to society at this ball. And like you said, the Queen of Love and Peace has to come up and bow and sort of kiss the feet of the Veiled Prophet on the throne. And then she is a woman. She's become, eligible for marriage. And so there's also a rival debutante ball in St. Louis where instead of the Veiled Prophet, it's the Archbishop. So the Archbishop is up on stage and he sort of, blesses these girls into womanhood. All of it is super patriarchal, weird, like forged in the mind of a man to like, a father who's really insecure about his daughter marrying someone, who wants to make a big sort of like show of her purity and her desirability as a wife, and it's all bad.
What the competing one? You're blowing me away here, man. The competing one is the Archbishop of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that one's called the Fleur-de-Lis ball. And so, because the Veiled Prophet is like, we're talking old style racist, so like no Catholics were allowed in.
Oh.
Like, the flavor of racist where there were certain white people who were still, not quite white enough. And so the Fleur-de-Lis ball came about from, the power of the Catholic Church. And St. Louis is pretty extensive. They control a bunch of the schools and a lot of property in the city. And so they had their own. And, the signs and symbols were just the same. But instead of the Veiled Prophet, who is, they're both kind of religious figures in a way, at least the way that both debutante balls present their host.
But now you said they're competing. Are they on the same night?
I don't think they're on the same night.
Okay.
And I don't think they, I don't know if they ever were it's kind of hard to know how these things operate in the mind of the St. Louis rich, because the girls are all really too young to sort of understand what's happening. They're 17-year-olds going to MICDS or Villa de Chun, and they just, they're still in their parents' house. They don't have a lot of room to rebel or anything. And so I think it's fun to go to the Veiled Prophet ball still for a lot of them, because they'll take pictures of it and put it on Instagram. But I don't know if anybody, I'm sure at one point there was competition between them for are you going to go to this one, or maybe you can go to both. I have no idea.
Now with this bizarre ritual of the father, his best friend, walking the daughter down the aisle and then presenting him to this costumed hooded man.
Sure.
Then now they have to bow down and kiss his feet, and especially the one who's been appointed Queen of Love and Beauty. Right. Are there any rumors, people pull you aside and say, hey, the girl who was the queen had a sleep with the Veiled Prophet, and the other fathers were groping the girls. And that must have been going on galore.
I have not come across anything that's a direct accusation about. But you can only imagine, in this insular group. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Or in the midst of history, let's say in 1954, do you really know what the mores are of the time? Or I know that it does get extremely close to this other myth of prima nocta, of there's this whole myth in medieval Europe about, not this kingdom, but the kingdom down the way, the one that we don't really know that well.
Yeah.
Well, over there, when one of the peasants wants to get married, the local lord gets to sleep with his wife on the wedding night, because that's the lord's right. That's what prima nocta means. And so, I'm not making any accusations, but there's also this hypersexualized thing with Thomas More's Veiled Prophet, who there's something, Thomas More's Veiled Prophet is scarred. His face is scarred because he's looked directly into God's gaze.
Oh my God.
As will happen, which is called a Gnostic sort of experience. And so there's this whole thing in the poem where the female protagonist, Zelika, is kind of mesmerized and enraptured by the Veiled Prophet, and wants to know what is under the veil and sort of look directly into the eyes of God. And that sort of distracts her from her true love, who is Azim, who's the rebel against the Veiled Prophet. And there's a whole sort of O'Hare ending where the Veiled Prophet kills himself by jumping into a dish of fire, and Zelika puts on the Veiled Prophet's veil and is mourning him, or maybe becoming the next Veiled Prophet. And Azim bursts through the fortress doors and hurtles a spear at the figure and accidentally clocks his girlfriend, basically. It's a real tragedy. But anyway, that's just all to say that there's a weird amount of symbology around virginity and the veiled prophet and power and, courtship and all this stuff.
Yeah. Any outright occult or black magic kind of symbology, rituals?
I mean, there's all kinds of weird sort of like symbols that got made up over the years. I think the most interesting thing about the veiled prophet is that it accidentally crosses into occult's sort of stuff because it's just trying to seem really mysterious, right, or like trying to build up its own lore in a way.
Okay, man. Fascinating stuff. Okay. This is fascinating stuff, man. We are talking to Devin Thomas Oshea. He's writing a book about the Veiled Prophet, which is down there in St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know why, Devin, you haven't moved away from there. You hear all this stuff.
Oh, I love St. Louis.
And but this is pretty weird stuff, man. But we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to be back with more Devin Thomas Oshea talking about the Veiled Prophet, too. And there's some stuff here, too, about Ronald Reagan's CIA director was involved in this and stuff. The girl from the office was involved in this. So we'll be right back. We'll be right back with more of Devin Thomas Oshea after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Devin Thomas Oshea, and he's writing a book about the Veiled Prophet. We're going to try and get him on Trine Day, get him published over there on Trine Day with Chris Milligan. Devin, we're talking about the Veiled Prophet. And now, at one point, the girl, Erin, the receptionist from the TV series The Office, was crowned Queen of Love and Beauty. And I think it was 1999, right?
That is correct. That'll be Ellie Kemper.
And what's the story there, man?
I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, there were actually a lot of people from The Office from St. Louis. Like Phyllis is from St. Louis as well. And Jenna Fisher is too. And Ellie Kemper is the daughter of the Kempers, who the Kemper Museum over on Wash U's campus was donated by her family. I think it speaks to something about the pipeline from, you know, the rich of anywhere in America to Hollywood. That
so true.
Yeah, that it only, you know, it helps when you're a daughter of the Kemper. I'm sure, you know, she's perfectly talented, it seems to me, but yeah, it's an odd little quirk, and she doesn't mention it in her autobiography, which I would like her to come out publicly and say something like, yes, I did this thing. Everyone should understand the context of this group. It's not exactly a thing I'm proud of because I left it out of my biography.
Yeah, it's in her Wikipedia. And also, too, you know, she did voiceover on The Simpsons and American Dad. She did a couple, which is, you know, a lot of people look into that, too, as well. Now, what about but the intelligence connection to this thing? Because William Webster.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big story that, you know, the big story of the Veiled Prophet in the 1970s is that in 1972, Jenna Scott, a member of a protest group, a guerrilla theater protest group called Action, Tarzan swung down onto the stage and unveiled the Veiled Prophet.
Oh, no.
And she unveiled the vice president of Monsanto, Tom K. Smith. And at this time, Monsanto was extremely down the road in dumping Agent Orange on Vietnam and just, you know, profiteering off of the Vietnam War. So this was a big deal. And the mastermind behind Action is the civil rights hero Percy Green. And Percy Green is, I've been on NPR with him. He's like a really important historic figure in St. Louis, especially for these protests, in which, like, at the end of the day, the name of Tom K. Smith, the only reason that we know that this guy was unmasked here is that one journal in St. Louis, not the Post-Dispatch, the biggest one, or the Globe Democrat that was still around, but the St. Louis Journalism Review was the only place to publish the name because everyone was so terrified of the power of the Veiled Prophet Society. They basically had this big protest happen in the middle of their big ceremony, had the sort of image of the Veiled Prophet completely shattered in front of everyone, and then nothing happened. Like, all of the photos disappeared. Wow. Nobody, you know, would run the name. And that's partly due to another thing that's going on in the Veiled Prophet Society where, you know, St. Louis is home to Boeing. We have a lot of, we just have a lot of connections to the military and the military-industrial complex. And part of that pipeline includes a guy named William Webster, who rose up the ranks of the Veiled Prophet Society, as well as, like, these other men's clubs called, like, the Noonday Society and the St. Louis County Country Club, which was all white and all male at the time. He became the director of the FBI, and then he went on to become the director of the CIA. And during a Senate interview with him, they basically prodded him about his belonging to the Veiled Prophet Society that didn't allow Jews to join, did not allow black people to join, didn't allow women. It was an all-men, all-white, all-Protestant club. And they sort of prodded him about it, but, there's another guy in the committee that was also in the Noonday Club, so they kind of, laughed it off and moved on. And he became CIA director. And then he went on to become the director of Homeland Security under George W. Bush. So William Webster, homegrown St. Louisan, not probably the end of the line for a lot of death and destruction in the world.
Head of the FBI under Jimmy Carter. Then Ronald Reagan made him head of the CIA when all that stuff was going on, Iran-Contra and all that. This guy,
sure.
Yeah, and then you got George Bush brings him in for Homeland Security, which he created Homeland Security. He's the first one, right?
Yeah, he's the first one, and just at the CIA when all the cool '80s stuff is happening. It's just
all that coke smuggling.
Yeah, just very hyper obsessed with South America there.
Yeah. Devin, what else is going on with this Veiled Prophet Society that I haven't asked you about that you want the audience to know?
Well, I think the one of the things. I think we've already kind of touched on it, but one of the things is that they're just they're not as crucial or as powerful as they once were. They're sort of this old established tradition, kind of like a thing of history that is supposed to be dead but is still walking around and able to do things like when Michael Brown was killed in North St. Louis in Ferguson. The Veiled Prophet Society went ahead according to normal. There was, the Ferguson had just happened, and somewhere in St. Louis, all the rich elites got together and had a big party. And, there's a lot of instances, especially in recent history, of the Veiled Prophet just being completely tone deaf to the reality in St. Louis, which is that we live in an apartheid city. We live in a city where, right now the city is half black, and you wouldn't think that's true from the representation that it gets. There's a long history of the black population in St. Louis being oppressed and systematically destroyed and systematically kept impoverished by the people in power. And so when you have something that is such a nail-on-the-head metaphor as the Veiled Prophet, who is, this rich guy who can do no wrong, and then you look around North St. Louis and you see the suffering and the hunger and the lack of opportunities and the corruption in these local governments like Ferguson's, you can't help but want to ask the Veiled Prophet, what are you doing? If you're in charge, why is this happening? And then that has to lead you to another, I think, point, which is this is intentional, and that the people in power want this to happen on a certain level because it's profitable. The prison industrial complex is profitable. It's profitable to clear the black people out of St. Louis so that gentrification can come in and take over this land eventually. And that's not the kind of place that St. Louis has to be, Yeah,
I believe that the governor said that he would pardon the McCluskeys for pointing weapons at a crowd of people.
Yeah, there's the Veiled Prophet is a crazy sort of metaphor, but the McCluskeys are an even more on the nose. St. Louis is this place that produces very beautiful American metaphors for race and class and politics. In the Ferguson riots, the guy in the activist in the American flag shirt hurling the smoking grenade back at the police. He later ended up dead under suspect conditions, like a lot of Ferguson activists. And Yeah, the McCloskeys are just another image that speaks volumes about the state of the city. And Governor Parsons, if you look at a picture of him, he looks like the most chucklehead of governors, just like a yuck look on his face. And he, is just another clown in the Missouri Republican arena. But the Veiled Prophet is, another, I don't know, a backup clown, maybe the king of the clowns, something like that. That sounds good.
Yeah, I heard from activists that were up there at Ferguson that when the FBI came in, Department of Justice came in, that they were going to people to the neighborhood and saying, well, have you heard anybody say they want to overthrow the government?
Yeah. Have you guys been thinking about doing terrorism?
Yeah.
Have you been thinking about maybe doing a revolution? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happened during Ferguson that's very much predicted the George Floyd protests and some of the more, I know a lot of friends who lived in North St. Louis and have come out and said stuff like, the media never really reported on these sets of events. Like, they never really reported on the sort of militia characters that showed up in Ferguson and stood on store rooftops, and who were they and what relation do they have to the police? All of these questions that become really, that were first showed in Ferguson and now we're being showed them again and again in the Black Lives Matter protests.
I just did an interview. Matter of fact, I think I might have misplaced it, but I just did an interview with some activists up in Reno, Nevada, and the sheriff up there in, I think it's Douglas County, Reno, recruited Boogaloo boys, okay, and and Patriot Prayer 3%ers to work security for an event that Donald Trump attended at the airport, and they were detaining people at gunpoint, unlicensed, not sworn in, volunteer militias.
Yeah, I mean, you just what could be worse? Like, you could get them drunk beforehand. Maybe that would put it over the top, but it is this super illegal aspect of now our police state that there's a very symbiotic relationship between the Boogaloo boys and the guy in Wisconsin who is now being praised as a hero for shooting an activist dead. It's really hard to look at that stuff and not think, oh, we're actually in a new, different phase of American politics because of this. This is not like the militia movements of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it was like when Trump was calling in all those federal officers, no badges, no identification. It's
insane. Unaccountable.
Whole new world. Devin, Thomas, Oshea, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show with this story about the Veiled Prophet and the Veiled Prophet Ball and the Veiled Prophet Parade over there in St. Louis, Missouri. How can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you?
They can follow me on Twitter at Devin T. Oshea. And yeah.
Devin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good night. And now a word from our sponsors. Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online. Email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat. Locate his hidden assets. Locate his hidden bank accounts. Find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com. 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an aquadam can do the job. An aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
OppermanReport.com. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows and interviews that you can't find on YouTube or Spreaker or iHeart or iTunes or KYAH. You can't find them anywhere else online, exclusive to our member sections, to our members. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here on the Opperman Report, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.